Egypt today is the scene of the greatest tomb raiders since Howard Carter risked the curse of the pharaohs to plunder the pyramids exactly 100 years ago in November 1922 at Luxor and the Valley of the Kings. Only this time, forget the grave robbers, it's the gravy train robbers who are pilfering the untold wealth of the West in the Valley of the Despots, also known as the luxury climate change junket COP27 at Sharm el-Sheikh, where you can cop it pretty sweet all right, as the Daily Mail reports. Quote, world leaders and delegates jetting into Egypt for the COP27 climate conference will be able to dine out on 90-pound mushroom sauce-covered beef medallions and sip on fancy bottomless cocktails while facing calls to cut down on meat consumption to save the planet. Quote, officials who land a spot at the conference's exclusive VIP restaurant will be able to dine out on an array of pricey meat and fish dishes served up during the 12-day climate conference that you're paying for at Sharm el-Sheikh this week. Quote, those with a taste for the luxurious can snap up an Angus beef medallion with sautéed potatoes for a pricey 90 quid or a creamy salmon for 35 quid, a bargain, after scoffing back a 43 quid seafood platter for starters. No wonder all the greatest and most powerful leaders of the climate cult are descending from the far-flung cities of the world, flying in by Learjet or luxury gas-guzzling yacht to lecture you and I and the rest of the world on how we should eat bugs and insects in order to save the planet. Indeed, here is the United Nations Secretary-General, the socialist Antonio Guterres, arriving the other day at the hallowed halls of COP27. Oh my goodness, I think he must have just spotted this man, our very own intrepid explorer and tomb raider, none other than our climate change minister, Chris Bowen, who has bravely gone to Egypt this week in search of treasure beyond his wildest dreams.
COP, like all COPs, is an important opportunity to talk about what Australia brings to the table. It's an important opportunity to help the rest of the world take the next step forward. I'm very much looking forward to leading the delegation, particularly in the second week. We have recently announced we have signed the methane pledge, and of course there'll be more international discussions at Sharm el-Sheikh.
Untold political riches await Mr. Bowen, now known as the Nefertiti of net zero, the Ramses of renewables, the King Tut-Tut of the nanny states. Yes, all King Tut-Tut has to do now is find the hidden treasure of endless government subsidies and pushing water uphill in order to generate untold riches and save the planet.
We call it the doorway to hell. Oh my God, it does exist.
Ah, yes, the gates of hell. United Nations Secretary-General Mr. Guterres will tell us all about those in a second to scare us into climate action. But it's actually the poor old humble Aussie taxpayer who is going to be defiled and desecrated and dragged into the afterlife of perpetual impoverishment by Mr. Bowen and his greedy Treasury thieves. Already, the Australian delegation has insisted that the controversial issue of loss and damage be added at the last minute to the agenda of the COP27 conference in Sharm el-Sheikh as a gesture of solidarity to Pacific countries. Which may sound like a bunch of meaningless hieroglyphics, but translated means Aussie taxpayers are going to hand over a king's ransom to any lucky islander leader who sticks out his paw, because apparently we are to blame for their islands sinking under the Pacific waves, even though plenty of them are actually increasing in size, not decreasing, as even the ABC reluctantly admits. When Howard Carter broke his way into King Tutankhamun's secret burial chamber deep inside the pyramids, the wealth that he discovered was estimated at the time to be worth around $15 million. But that's peanuts to the gold and rubies that Chris Bowen and his expedition intend to excavate from the coffers of the humble Aussie taxpayer. Australia should be paying an extra $2.6 billion to the United Nations $100 billion climate finance target, according to the Lovies, in a just-released analysis of countries' financial continuations to the international agreed target. Australia has only 38% of its fair share, has only paid 38% of its fair share, ranking us the third worst country behind the US and Canada, according to these reports, sure. And in news that would have Howard Carter spinning in his grave, the eco-warriors are demanding that the United Kingdom pays up to £1 trillion in damages to the rest of the world for her role in creating climate change. You know, by inventing all the modern equipment, transportation, drugs, manufacturing, goods, and so on that have created the modern prosperity, good health, and civilization that we all enjoy. That is Great Britain's curse, to have been at the forefront of industrialisation, technological progress, innovation, peaceful colonisation, that shared the just laws and moral values of the Enlightenment around the world. It's Britain's curse to have been that today, where instead of being revered and respected, that past is denigrated and despised in favour of pagan earth-worshipping, superstition, and endless guilt trips. Indeed, the eco-fantasist new British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is already proposing, quote, climate reparations to poorer countries like Pakistan. Quote, Britain faces both a moral responsibility and an economic necessity to tackle climate change, he said in his opening speech at COP27. The curse of Australia is to have fellow traveller and climate carpetbagger Chris Blackout Bowen as our climate change minister at a time when we desperately need to be increasing our energy supplies and fossil fuel and uranium resources, but instead are concentrating on madcap schemes like pushing water uphill and green hydrogen hubs. Of course, like any ancient Egyptian cult, the climate change cult relies on scaring the living daylights out of anyone who dares question the orthodoxy. But forget ancient skeletons and mummies coming back to life and secret burial chambers. Today's climate warriors are much more adept at striking fear into the hearts of their loyal followers, many of them children. Here's Roger Hallam, the bloke who set up Extinction Rebellion, and more recently Just Stop Oil and Animal Rebellion and Insulate Britain. Yes, he invented all of them. Radical activist groups that encourage our kids to go around gluing themselves onto roadways, vandalising paintings. Well, here is this bloke, yet again, terrorising impressionable young minds.
The other thing about social collapse is the complete loss of material security, or law and order, as you might say. So what will happen is episodes where someone, a gang of young men, come into your house, they take your girlfriend, they take your mother, they put her onto the table and they gang rape her in front of you. And then after that, they take a hot stick and they poke out your eyes and they blind you. That's the reality of the annihilation project that you face.
What a truly repulsive and repellent individual. Climate change will lead to your sister, your mother, and so on being gang raped and pokers put in your eyes. This is child abuse, pure and simple. But as I keep saying, there is no difference philosophically between those vile characters and those who sign us up to net zero, or tell us to cut methane emissions, or to blow up coal-fired power stations. There's no difference intellectually between climate aficionados and that nutcase. Don't believe me? I mentioned before the gates of hell. Hyperbole? Not at COP27. Here's the head of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, sowing fear and terrorizing young minds.
We are on a highway to climate hell with our foot still on the accelerator.
A highway to hell. Well, it's paved with net zero emissions. Maybe Guterres secretly wishes he could join AC/DC.